Hello everyone. This is a video I wanted to make on how I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, since I was looking for resources like that, but I couldn't find many that actually went into lower level specifics on how to do something. It was just more general, so I thought maybe with my experience I can help some other people by making a video. With that, I want to get over some background stuff. I graduated from university back in May. It is currently September, and I moved in mid-July, July 10th to be specific. And then second, this is all just my experience and things that I think worked for me and I would recommend to other people, but it doesn't mean you have to follow everything or anything I say. It's just to help give you a better idea of what you can do, so you can make a better plan with knowing the tools that you have. Let me check this screw. Oh, okay. So with that said, let's get into the structure of the video, which will be broken down into a few parts. The first is what I'm gonna call pre-planning. The second will be moving, and then the third will be like the setup and settling in phase. And then fourth will be some tips and general advice that you should do once you actually make your move. Oh, also, I'll be doing two things in this video. I'll be keeping a timeline of all the events and dates that I actually either did something or had something arrive. It'll make more sense, but I'll keep a timeline of everything specifically so you can see how long this whole process took. And the second thing I will do is I will keep a running tab of how much everything cost per step. It'll be the exact cost, and then at the end I'll keep a total, or I'll show a total of how much the entire move cost me. So with that said, let's get into the first phase of the video. So phase one of this video is going to be pre-planning. So this is going to include how I scheduled a flight, how I found an apartment, and some general packing, like what I was thinking about packing while I was going through this. So first, for scheduling a flight, this is actually the easiest part. My company basically arranged most of it, so they paid for the flight, and they also gave me a few options for what flight I wanted to take. I think there was 3 options, and so I just picked the flight that's earliest in the morning so that I could actually do some more setup and things I needed to get done when I actually arrived to my destination. So that is pretty much it for the flight. I did, however, at this point, not know how many suitcases I wanted to bring and the stuff I wanted to bring. I just knew that this was the flight that I wanted. And also, this flight was scheduled for me about two to 3 weeks before my actual flight date. So for most of the time, I didn't know what the exact time of the flight was, but I knew that I knew the general time that it would take place in. Next, for finding an apartment, this was definitely one of the most challenging parts of this move, and I basically have 4 main things that I was looking for and that I did during this process. So the first thing is that I knew it would take a few months for me to find the place that I really liked. Especially since I was looking for 1x1 units or studios, since I didn't want a roommate. And I think that means I started looking for apartments in the end of April for my move in mid-July. And I would use resources like apartments.com, and then I would sign up for getting email notifications from different apartments that I thought were interesting based on the budget that I had. And I also used Reddit a lot, which is actually how I found my current apartment. But that does lead me into the main piece of advice I have for this, which is to call. Please don't email, because apartments can take a really long time to give you information. You might have follow-up questions, so calling can give you that direct back and forth immediately. It helps you get a better impression of what the actual apartment is like. If the people there are nice and they seem like they're happy to be there, then generally the apartment is probably a lot better and you'll be more happy living there. I definitely noticed that for a few places that I called, that I was interested in, and I called and then I was like, nope, I do not want to live there. And related to that is from my current apartment. When I actually called, I guess I had so many questions that they ended up recognizing me. So when I needed some help for getting packages here, they actually helped me and helped me move some of my bedding, like my mattress and I think my bed frame here before I actually got here, so I didn't have to sleep on the floor, which was super nice of them, and I appreciate them a lot for that. That would not have happened if I hadn't called, so I do recommend that. For more specifics on finding places, I also would try asking if you could FaceTime for a tour beforehand. Virtual tours and like the 3D, like the camera that you can walk around digitally in, it's fine, but those rooms are like they might not be up to date because they might have been created like a couple years ago. Okay, and also related to budgeting, I think the general rule is that you should not have your monthly rent or how much you pay for your living be more than 30% of your gross income, or sorry, 30% of your net income. What? Did I just forget what gross and net are? Okay, a little bit of a brain lapse. Yeah, so the general rule is that you should not have your monthly rent be more than 30% of your gross income, but, oh, sorry, that's just one of my neighbors with the windows down. More than 30% of your gross income, but I never really understood that. So I made sure to not have rent be more than 30% of my net income, since I didn't want to spend more than I actually had. So that's the rule I recommend. In terms of specifics for actually how I found the place by doing this internet research, first I filtered based on different locations in the city that I looked up online and seemed like that's where most people either wanted to live, or they were safe places to live, or they were affordable places to live. So I filter based on location like that. Then I look for multiple apartments in that location of each type, so of the 1x1s and of the studios. Then I would compare when they would actually be available. So like if they were not free before I wanted to move in, obviously then there's no chance of getting that apartment or that unit. The last thing I would recommend is if you have to sign a lease for an apartment earlier before you move in. So for example, I had to sign my lease a month before I actually moved in. I would recommend doing that. It does obviously cost an extra month's rent, but if you can find a deal, for example, a lot of places will do like sign now and you'll get the first 8 weeks free or 12 weeks free or something like that, then you won't have to pay that extra difference. But also, if you find an apartment or a unit you really like, you're gonna be living there, and I do think it is worth that payment, but of course that is for you to decide. I had to do that, and I am very grateful that I did do that, because if I didn't, I would not have found a 1x1 that was affordable in a very nice area that is where I live now, since all the units in this apartment actually ran out by that time. So I do recommend that, and I would watch out for that and keep that into your calculations for budgeting and timeline. Okay, so the final two parts of this first phase are basically what I thought I needed to buy when I came here, and then what I also wanted to bring, because they kind of go hand in hand. Like what I don't bring, I need to buy, and vice versa. So I made a list of things that I really thought I needed when I came here. I'll put it on the side of the screen, probably around here. I actually don't know. We'll see what editing me does. Editing me is tired, boss. Now, in terms of items that you, or specific items that you think you should bring, that's of course up to you, but again, the list is there before, but also I would generally recommend bringing items that you either cannot afford to buy again or do not want to buy again. For me, that was kind of hard to decide, since everything that I knew I needed, I already had back at home. I just had to buy it again here because it was literally too much to bring, or like, it would have just been unnecessary, which is a little unfortunate, but that's part of the moving process. You just gotta get over that hump. Also note that at this time, I still did not know how many boxes I wanted to ship over. I just knew that I wanted to get some items, and then as I created my list of items, that helped me guide into how many boxes I would need and how many suitcases I would need, which I will get to in the next phase, which is moving. Okay, so for the moving phase, there were two main parts for this. So this was all happening in 1 week. So from Saturday to Monday, I was just packing. At this point in time, I had a much better idea of what I wanted to bring. So I tried to fit everything into a few boxes. First was for my PC, second was for my monitor, third was a heavy-duty Home Depot cardboard box for all my general items, and the fourth was my cookingware box. I also planned for 2 check-in suitcases. Those were all going to be my clothes and then whatever items I could fit in there too, since I didn't want to ship any of my clothes, since I wanted to ship items that I wasn't able to bring on the airplane myself. So I had my 2 check-in suitcases, and then I also had I had a carry-on and then my backpack. So those are everything that I brought with me on the plane, and then the other aforementioned 4 boxes are the ones I shipped with USPS. I would also say that I spent about 15 to 20 hours packing over the span of those 4 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Really 3 days, wow. Yeah, over the span of those 3 days. But 5 to 8 hours of that time was just packing up my PC parts and my PC, since I wanted to be really careful with that. If you're also needing to ship a computer, I'll probably link a few videos in the description for ones that I found that were really good, as well as the packing foam that I used for padding out the internal components, since I think that really helped, because nothing came damaged other than my CPU cooler, which it's fine, it just got some bent, but that was on my fault for packing incorrectly. In regards to specifics on how I actually packed, this was pretty much just using a lot of bubble wrap and cardboard boxes within the large heavy-duty box and the cookingware box, as well as trying to fit items in weird configurations. It's pretty much packing. Like, it's a little bit scary, but as you're gonna have to do it, and then once you do it, it's just trying to pack as efficiently as possible. But make sure you definitely use a lot of protective material, since you should always assume that the box will get thrown around or just destroyed completely, because that way, in case something like that happens, or like let's say it's getting shipped on a truck or on a plane and there's like a sudden jerk or turbulence respectively, then at least you prepared your packing you packed in a way that was prepared for those situations. Okay, so that was all Saturday through Monday. On Tuesday, that's when I actually shipped my items. So this was something that actually really inspired me to make this video. I wasn't sure how to ship my boxes. And so I ended up deciding on shipping with USPS because there was a post office that was pretty close to my house, and I thought that would just be the easiest. But I didn't know how to do any of the actual postage and shipping preparation online. So here's what I did. First, I went online and I used the price estimator calculator, as well as how I think it's like a shipping delivery date estimator. I'll probably put links to those in the description too if you're interested. But I used these to determine how much it would cost to ship an item, which also helped me realize when I should ship an item versus when I should just buy it new, since if it was cheaper one way or the other, then I would just do the cheaper option. But then second, it also helped me determine when I should ship these items, which is how I landed on Tuesday. I think the website showed me that it would take about 5 days to ship these items. So I wanted everything to arrive after I arrived. So I think that was on Thursday. So I wanted my items to arrive by Saturday, since I started working on the following Monday. And that's why I picked Tuesday. Then Wednesday, I didn't do anything. I was just spending time with my family and friends and my pets, who are very cute. And then on Thursday, that was my actual flight date. So I flew here, landed around, I think it was around 11 a.m. And then that's when the settling in phase began. Oh, I also forgot to mention how I actually shipped the items with USPS. So like I said, I didn't know how to do any of the shipping preparation and label creation online, since it was kind of confusing to me. But what I did do was I packed up all my boxes. So I finished packing, I think, Monday. So since I shipped everything on Tuesday, I finished the day before. Then I took my boxes into a car and drove to the post office. And then when I got there, I asked the lady at the front desk if I could bring in my boxes and if I could mail them. And she said yes. So I bring them. And they were pretty large, but that process was pretty much just me writing down the returning and shipping address on the boxes. Then she created the label there in person, and then I verified the information. Then when I paid for the labels, she gave me a tracking number, and then she took the boxes and then put them in the back and said, we'll take care of it. So I didn't have to do much outside of that, outside of paying and writing down the labels. I also would recommend doing this in person, just because the big box labels have to be created based on the weight and the dimensions of the box. So unless you have a scale at home and you have accurate dimensions, if you can do that accurately and you're confident in your abilities, then go for it at home. More power to you. But if you get it wrong, then you might have to pay more than you actually thought you would, and that price increase may not be insignificant. So that's the main reason why I did it in person. I just wanted to get an accurate estimate of how much it would cost, and I'll also have and then that'll be added to the tabulation as well. Okay, so for the settling in phase, that started when I landed from my flight. But beforehand, I knew that I wanted to do a few things. First, I knew that I needed to buy a lot of groceries and items for my new place. And second, I also wanted to buy a lot of used furniture since I wanted to save money there. And because of that, I ultimately decided on renting a car for 2 days, so that Thursday, then Friday, and then returning it Saturday morning. That way I could get all my furniture and items that I mentioned earlier as fast as possible, since I really wanted to set up before I started working, since I wouldn't have as much time. Now, it was very tiring and physically exhausting, as I'll get to when I mention the furniture, but I definitely do recommend trying to get at least as much done as you're physically capable of within your first setup time period, so that way you can relax and enjoy your new apartment. I also will be including the groceries in the tabulation for the cost, I will not be including the groceries for the tabulation in the cost, but I will be including the furniture. And I do want to especially recommend Facebook Marketplace. A lot of great deals can be found there from people who are moving or just need to get rid of something quickly. For example, I got my couch and my coffee table for $50 each, which was a huge steal. Also, make sure that you know how to get items delivered to you, so you can deliver a lot of furniture that way, like tables, desks, chairs, etc. And you can also ask people for help. Now, this is kind of a little bit up to your own discretion, but at least for me, I had to move the couch by myself from the car. I had the people who sold it to me help me put it in the car, but then getting it out of the car and getting into my apartment, I just had to do by myself. Luckily, there was this random stranger on the street who was super kind and offered to help me, and he seemed trustworthy, so I said yes, and then he helped me. But don't be afraid to ask some random people for help. You'll never know if you won't try, and it can definitely save you a lot of back pain. Overall, it took about 2 weeks to set everything up. 4 weeks if you're including the TV, because I had an old one and then I returned it because I didn't like it, and then I got a new one. So that was the last piece of big equipment that I had. So about 2 weeks for everything to be mostly set up. But in terms of the core stuff that I had and I needed, I had everything done by those first 3 days, which was, like I said, physically demanding and exhausting, but it's definitely helped because I was able to then finally relax afterwards. In terms of specific places I visited for things I bought, I went to Safeway and an Indian grocery bazaar for groceries. I also went to Home Goods for a lot of the items that I bought for it's home goods, like decorations, mats, that type of stuff, bedding as well. And then I, again, used Facebook Marketplace, which is how I found, I think, about half of my furniture, which was really nice and I think saved me a lot of money. Okay, finally for the last section, this is just other important information that you should be aware of when you're moving, and this will be really quick. So you should update your voting information, your billing information if you want to, your mailing information, and then your job information. This is actually really important because if you worked with the company before, then they might have your old address on record, or your new address may not be just in their system for some reason. So you should verify that, and that way your tax information is still correct. You can do it manually, or you can do it through your company, however it's set up for you, but definitely keep an eye out for that, since you don't want to be paying taxes that you should not be, or worse is missing taxes that you definitely should be paying. Well, I guess it's worse legally. Okay, and that's it. Please let me know if you have any more questions in the comments, or anything that you wish you saw or could have done better. But I hope this video was at least a little bit helpful, and now I will have a really fun time editing all of this. Thank you.